All right, so we're back with another Modified Rides podcast for you guys. Today, I have someone that you may not have heard the name in a while, but as soon as you hear it, you're going to know. Today, I have Kris Bloom on. What's going on, Kris?
What's up? How's it going?
So, any of you OG guys that are older than, I don't know,
Dirt.
30 maybe, anybody that's been in the custom vehicle scene for the last 20 plus years remembers Street Source Mag, originally started as Street Scene, SSM. So, Kris, I guess you were the founder, creator of Street Source back in the day?
Yeah. Me and Garrett did it together. I think we started it. I think we started prepping for it in like 1999, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, God, has it been that long ago?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Wow. So, I always start back some of these earlier years. So, did you know you wanted to mess with the custom vehicle world? I mean, I know you're in the tech world, the tech industry, but did you have a love for the custom vehicles before you started Street Source?
Yeah, I had a good friend of mine that had a S10 that he had lowered and had one of those no window shells on it and was painted
Yeah.
graphics. This was back in South Carolina when I lived there, and
Oh, you live in South Carolina? Where at?
yeah, Aiken.
Oh, okay, because I'm just in Asheville. Well, south of Asheville.
Nice.
Yeah,
But
I didn't
anyways, I
realize you
lived
lived.
out there. I lived out there, and he there was a couple of guys that had trucks, but he was actually a really good friend of mine, and I loved that thing. I was like, that is so awesome. And then I started reading mini trucking, and then I was kind of hooked from there.
So, did you ever build something of your own before you started the Street Source deal?
Yeah, the street stores actually started because of Relaxed Atmosphere.
Okay.
Um, I joined RA. Um, I was actually living in Idaho Falls at the time, and the chapter was the Boise chapter. I was living in Idaho Falls at the time, and I got a job here in Boise. Um, Joined RA, and Garrick was actually the chapter president at the time. That's how me and him met. Um, and basically, we would sit and bullshit about stuff. He always wanted to be a magazine editor, and I was a tech guy and thought it would be cool to create a website. Um, and so yeah, it actually originally started with the Relaxed Atmosphere website. Now that I remember, the when I joined the club and Garrett realized how good I was with computers, we convinced the club to give me control of the website.
Okay. What year was this?
This had to have been in '99.
Okay.
Um, Hell, maybe even '98 for all I know. It might have gone back to '98. I think about it. But no, I took control of the website and we added a whole bunch of features to the RA website. Basically, it's something similar to if you're used to Street Source, something similar to the owner's profiles, where the members of the club can go and upload their stuff themselves, yada yada yada. Did that kind of
I
stuff to
remember
it. And then eventually we got a hair up our ass, and I went and built the instant message system in the chat room. Most people don't know that all existed on the Relaxed Atmosphere website way before Street
that.
Source
Really?
existed. Yeah,
So it
where
was
I
just
actually that's where I actually wrote
just
it.
for club members?
Yeah, it was.
So
I mean, it was actually that's why that's one of the reasons why the magazine came about is because the instant messenger and the ability to sign up and create an account and all that stuff was open to the world. And a lot of the
yeah.
members of the RA were like, "Hey, this isn't club anymore. You've got like this whole community going on that's not just for members. You guys need to take that off, right?"
Okay.
And so then me and Garrick started brainstorming, and then like I said, he always wanted to be a magazine editor, um, and we just over drinking beers and shooting the shit. He was like, "Well, why can't we put a magazine online?" And of course, this was back when dial-up was the big way of connecting to the internet, right?
Yeah.
So I was
No
like,
Facebook, none of no
yeah,
Instagram.
yeah. And so I was just like, wow, a magazine is so graphically intense. I'm like, I don't know if I can pull that off. And he goes, well, what's the problem? I'm like, download speeds is the problem. We're on dial-ups
Yeah.
here, you know? And he goes, come on, Kris, man, I know you can figure it out. And I'm like, all right. And I was pretty good at Photoshop and stuff like that at the time. And so I'm like, well, let me play around in Photoshop and see if I can figure out a design that will not just totally just take 2 years to download on dial-up. And so I did.
Yeah.
I took a couple of of weeks. It might have been a month. I don't remember how long it was. But I after work, I'd sit on the computer and I'd mess around in Photoshop and trying to figure out different ways of doing layouts that could actually load in a decent amount of time. And when I finally came up with, because the one I was worried about, it was the features, where you've got the text.
Yeah.
And that's why if you noticed all of the Street Source, the old ones that were completely HTML based, the text was always over a faded background. Because one of the
Yeah.
things that was weird was that one of the things I found during that investigation was is that if you faded out the background, you could basically lower the quality to the point to where you couldn't really tell the quality had been lowered, which would allow you to lower the download speed. And so there's all these
Yeah.
different things I was messing around with, and I finally came back to Garrick and said, "Yeah, I think we can do it." And
So
so,
where did the original name? How did you come up with the original name of Street Scene?
um, I think it was because of the fact that everybody was calling it the mini truck scene, and that was just a little bit too long of a name. We liked the term scene because that's kind of what we were kind of going to build, right? It was something that was just
Yeah.
about the entire scene because we had notions of forums and chat rooms and all that right from the get go. It didn't. We actually put the magazine out first and then built all the rest of it around it. But we had plans of that from the beginning, and so that was. And I don't remember exactly. I mean, it was just brainstorming between me and Garrick of what to call it. We wanted it something as short as possible. I do know that because it's easier to type the domain name in.
Yeah. Well, I know before that, I guess the only way that any of us across the country would communicate with each other was like some of the AOL chat rooms. You had like the
Mm-hmm.
mini truck chat room and all that is where everybody kind of got to know each other before Street Source come out.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we did a lot of things way before anybody else did. As a matter of fact, we had chat rooms and instant messaging and those and even friends lists we had on Street Source. Where you could have somebody as a friend. Yada yada yada. We built all of that before Facebook did.
And how come you're not a billionaire like Zuckerberg now, I guess?
That's the question. I think a lot of it has to do with that we were in Idaho. We weren't rubbing elbows with people that had lots of money. I think that's basically what it boils down to. But it
Gotcha.
is what it is.
So what your first launch of at the time when it was Street Scene, what do you remember most about that first launch? Was there a certain vehicle that you used to catch people's eye, or how'd that work?
Yeah, that was oh, what's his name? It starts with an E. Anyways, it was a member of RA. He ended up on the cover. It was a wild, badass graphic Astro minivan, body dropped in the whole
Okay.
9 yards. Um, that was on the cover, and that's basically what catapulted us because that truck was awesome, and luckily he actually worked with us. He built lots of badass rides over the years, and he let us shoot all of them. But it actually started out where we're like, okay, we can do this, and so we're like, okay, well, we've got to go to some shows. We got to get some content, right?
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, while we're at the shows, we actually went and we did a totally guerrilla marketing, man, because we didn't have any money. It was too. He was living with his girlfriend at the time, I believe, and I was in a apartment with some random guy, and so we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have anybody backing us or anything like this, and so we decided well, we're going to have to do this the old school way. And so we went to I think it was Office Max or Office Depot or something like that. We printed off like 2,000 flyers.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I probably could find the old artwork if I dig hard enough. But I remember looking at it now, going, "Oh, that's ugly." But it's usually the way
I
it
do the
goes,
same
right?
thing with my pictures from back then too.
But anyways, and so we are like, okay, we're gonna go to, and the show that we decided to go to first was West Coast Nats, 2000.
Okay.
Um, and so we went to the show and we just walked around, handed out flyers, and tried to find some feature vehicles that we could shoot. Luckily, like you said, we already lined up the Astro van. We found a couple of other
Yeah.
ones that were awesome, and they were cool enough to let us shoot because we were nobodies at that point. They had no reason to let us do it, right? But we did it, and we put the first issue of the magazine together, and it came out really well. And we just basically kept doing
So
it.
had you and Garrick done any photography, like automotive photography before that? Or is that your first dabble at it?
I mean, shooting our own stuff, but yeah, I don't know if that counts. But no, I
Yeah.
mean, um, yeah, not really. I mean, I think we kind of just figured it out. I mean, keep in mind back then. I mean, digital cameras were like,
3.2 megapixel, I think,
yeah.
was my first one.
Well, the first camera that we were using was an old Sony camera that would actually take floppy disks on the side of the camera.
I remember that one.
Yeah, and so it was like if you could fit an entire like walk around and shoot photos of all the vehicles at a show and have it all fit on a bunch of floppy disks, that shows you how low quality the photos were.
Yeah.
'Cause you
So
could, I
when
think I could shoot like five or
no,
six photos on one floppy disk or something like that. I think is what it was, but yeah.
when did you know that, all right, well, this is going to be a hit, this is going to blow up? How
I
soon after starting it did it hit you?
I think the moment that it hit me was somebody forwarded us an email. There was an internal email over at Street Trucks,
Okay.
and it was a conversation they were having about us. And I don't remember the exact wording of the email, but the tone was, "We have to take these guys serious. Look at this."
And there
And
was no digital side of Street Trucks at the time.
no, no,
They were strictly print.
it was all print. But we had the attention of the guys over at Street Trucks, and that to us was
And
it meant okay,
in
we're doing something
2000,
right.
that was only in 2000. That wasn't even really around for a year at that point. So
Yeah,
they were new to the magazine, and you guys were new. So that, I guess, that speaks volumes.
yeah. Both me and Garrick were like, okay, this is cool. That means we're doing something right. So
Yeah.
I mean, if they're worried about us, we're doing something right. So that
So
was cool.
how long did you keep the street scene name? I remember that was a big debacle when all that changed.
That's a good question. I think we were around for a couple years before we got the cease and desist letter. Actually, no, they weren't even nice enough to give us a cease and desist letter. They just hit us with a lawsuit. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we changed the
So
name,
that
is because we got sued. For trademark violation.
and that was I guess a hot rod type magazine.
Yeah,
It wasn't even a magazine.
they actually
It was
did
more
do
like
it.
a
Yeah,
newsletter or something. What?
they had a magazine, but it had very low readership. It was I think just to their membership kind of a thing. It was the NSRA, not like NHRA like drag racing, but a
Yeah, yeah,
smaller organization, NSRA, National Street Rod Association.
yeah.
And they had a registered trademark on a magazine called Street Scene, which basically was it. I mean, there was no way to fight it. We were directly in their trademark, like just stomping on it. So we were just like, oh crap.
But I'm sure, like, you didn't have Google the way it is now. You couldn't just Google a
Yeah,
name to see if it's there or
we had
domain
no
check.
idea. We had no idea that it existed. I mean, it wasn't the name of a company or an organization. It was the name of a product, basically. And so we did trademark searches and things like that, but it didn't. For some reason, it didn't come up in my searches, and so we didn't know. We had no idea it even existed until we got served. We got a knock on the door, and got served with papers. And we're like, "What is this?"
So how did you transition to Street Source at that point? Did you just say, "Oops, sorry, we'll change our name," or did you
Yeah,
try to fight it?
that's all we could do. I mean, we contacted a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
We only talked to him for a couple hours, and the lawyer's like, "Yeah, you guys need to settle this somehow because you're gonna lose." They're like, "This is an open shut. It's that bad. It's open shut. You're gonna lose." And we're like, "Crap." And so, yeah, we just said, "All right, fuck it." And so we called him up on the phone and said, "What do you want to do?" We don't have any money. We didn't. We were telling the truth. You're not gonna get any money out of us. So what do you want us to do? You can get a settlement for 2 million, and it there's just no way
Never
you
gonna get
might
it.
get $5. I mean, you're never gonna get it. So because at that point it was just me and Garrick living in a 2 bedroom apartment, sharing a 2 bedroom apartment. We were using the dining area as office. We were paying like $650 a month for rent. We didn't have a lot of money. Street Source, contrary to popular belief, didn't really make us any money.
Yeah.
It was passion, 100%. Right, we loved it. Um, but no, they ended up agreeing that they would let us change our name. We would have to give them all the shirts and stickers and everything else that we owned that were already printed because that was things that had their name on it that they wanted physical possession of. So we had to ship them all the shirts that we had printed and reprint new ones, and all the stickers had to be reprinted. And we basically did. We boxed it up and shipped it to them. I don't know why they wanted it, but they did. Um, and then the next task was, okay, what are we going to call the new one?
So
Um,
you're probably out a chunk of money by sending, your merchandise at that point. I'm sure
oh
you
yeah,
probably
it
didn't have,
hurt.
10,000 shirts or something, but it's still a chunk of money.
Oh yeah, it hurt. It definitely hurt. I mean, we were just kind of like, oh, but we figured it out. Um, I think the next order of shirts we did was a little bit longer than we wanted because like I said, we we had to send them quite a few shirts if I remember correctly. And so it was like, the stickers are cheap, but the shirts, nah, not so much.
So how did you come up with the street source name? I know you probably, I guess, trying to keep the street part of it and the same letters, but how did
Yeah.
you come up with source?
The two main goals there, actually the biggest goal, as a matter of fact, it was just a rule. We had to come up with something that its initials were SSM because that's what everybody
Yeah.
knew us as. Um, who's going to say Street Source Magazine in a conversation? No, it's SSM, right? So I'm
Yep.
like, we got to keep that. And then I'm like, and then we're like, okay, well, we can keep. And as a matter of fact, during the lawsuit, we had to tell them what we're going to change our name to, and they had to approve it.
Really?
They had to agree that they were going to be okay with that name. And so it was as closest thing that we could find to Street Scene Magazine that would make them happy. Is basically what it boiled down to.
So I guess then you're scrambling trying to basically rebrand yourself so people don't think it's somebody new.
Yep. Yeah, and we had an agreement with them that the old domain name would forward to the new website with a page that said that the name had changed and that we were. They worded. They told us what to put on that page. And for a little while, if you typed in streetscenemag.com, it would redirect you to a page that would basically say it's no longer Street Scene, it's now Street Source, and it had a button you could click to go to streetsourcemag.com.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, there's a lot of logistics to that whole lawsuit and getting the name changed and everything.
Well, how long till you guys started taking work from other people? Because I know Bobby Stewart shot for you, which is who, kind of one of the first ones I met during the whole deal, because he'd shot my CRX back in '01.
Yeah.
So how long you started picking up other people to send you work, and it wasn't just you and
Oh,
Gary?
I think that was almost immediately, if I remember correctly. Like I said, I have the old back issues on disc. I might have to go and pull them up and see where the first time we see somebody else's name besides mine and Garrick's. I bet you it was very, very early.
Because
First few issues at least.
I know I'd see you guys at a few shows. I think like probably mini nats and like stuff in Florida. I know you guys would fly out to a few of them, but most of the time it was on this end of the country is Bobby handling it because he was in Tennessee at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was I think that's one of the things that we were really concerned about is that remember, we're not making a lot of money. So we're not going to be able to fly to these shows. And so the only way we could get to a show is either if the promoter were to somehow get us out there, or we could find somebody in the area that could get there. Right? And so it became a necessity. I mean, Bobby was necessary, basically. Because we didn't want to be just a West Coast magazine. That didn't make a lot of sense to us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, no, like I said, he shot mine at Slammin' and Jammin' in '01. I don't know how I remember the date, but it was. And then right after that is when I started shooting for you guys. I remember I got with you and Garrick and said, hey, I'm in North Carolina. I can get a few of these things for you. And I literally had a 3.2 megapixel little point and shoot camera that I was shooting features and stuff with. But it allowed me to kind of teach myself how to shoot. And then it wasn't, I don't say a couple months or so after that is when I got linked up with Street Trucks and started shooting for Brian and, and all there. But I think I would rush home probably every day after work and log in, see who was in the chat room. I think most of us OG guys would spend more time in a chat room than we kind of wanted to admit.
Yeah.
If you would sit there, just wait. There'd be like 5 people, and you'd be like, all right, I don't know these people. I'm just going to sit and hang out till it gets busy. But if you went in there like on a Friday or Saturday night or something, I mean, it would just be people razzing each other and then people asking questions and then sending links to the forum you had. Like, it was the go-to website period, for any custom automotive person. I don't think there was any other competition for you guys at that point, was
No,
there?
no, because I mean there was MySpace, I guess, kind of, sort of, but it didn't really.
It didn't
It,
have the same. It didn't have the
yeah,
chat. It didn't have the
it,
forum.
it didn't have a way for a large group of people to connect, like what you'd see on Facebook and so forth nowadays. No, I mean Street Source was a hangout spot basically in the
Well, I
chat
mean,
room.
I know that the forum side of what y'all had was even before forums were really a thing. I mean, there was probably a couple of them, but I think you guys had that forum aspect unlocked where people could go in and post everything. You had it separated into genres and what the
Mhm.
topic was about, all that. I think you guys were first or one of the first on that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it was. I mean, there were some other mini trucking websites out there that had forums. I think what made our forum better than everyone else's wasn't necessarily the software per se. I think it was because of the fact that we had the magazine, we had the chat rooms, we had the instant messaging, we had all this other stuff that it was just the go-to spot. And once you become the go-to spot, it just blows up, and it shocked the shit out of us when it did. But we're just like, wow, this is. This is crazy. I remember, as a matter of fact, still to this day, the struggles that I had trying to keep up with Street Source's growth has been what's landed me positions since then. Um,
Really?
oh yeah, because remember we didn't have a lot of money, and so we were hosting with just a normal hosting like you would expect at the time, where you'd pay $50 a month or whatever it is, and it was professional hosting, for companies or whatever, and we were using that for a
Yeah.
while, and pretty soon it couldn't handle us anymore, and so we ended up having to find a company that had a bigger plan that could handle more traffic. And we just kept doing that and kept doing that and kept doing that. And pretty soon we got to the biggest one in the country, and they said, "No, you're too big for us." And we're just like, "Oh, what the hell do we do now?" And
Wow.
and so
Well,
at the
what other companies were they? What other companies were they dealing with?
oh heck, I don't remember what they were back then.
Like,
It
what other
was
companies did they have that
well, see, basically the way it works is that most of the companies like back then, like Microsoft and these other big companies that had these really really high traffic websites, they weren't paying another company to host their website. They were hosting it themselves. And so basically
gotcha?
the only option we had at that point was to buy our own hardware, our own computers, and basically lease space at the local ISP and actually put our servers in the rack at the local ISP and connect directly into the internet with our equipment. That was what we had to do.
Wow.
And then so
Now,
there,
did you have advertisers back then yet,
yeah,
or
we
was
had,
it
yeah,
just
we had advertising at that point, yeah, for sure. Um, but yeah, it was a constant battle because especially after we had our own physical hardware, because making the website faster or making it handle more traffic, what are you going to do? Put another computer in there? Those machines, those Dell PowerEdge servers that we were using that could be mounted in a rack, were like $3,000 a piece back in the late '90s. That's a lot of money.
damn?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's so when the website started getting slow because the traffic was just going nuts. I think at one point in time, Street Source's homepage, the homepage by itself, was getting 12.5 million page views a day.
A day?
A day.
Holy shit!
Yeah, it was nuts. And so anyways, trying to keep up with that it's just murder. And people are spoiled nowadays, where all they got to do is, they've got these cloud hosting. We're just going to click a couple buttons, and boom, you got more horsepower. You know,
Yeah.
back then you didn't have that option. There was no such thing as cloud hosting. It didn't exist yet. And so I had to either go buy more equipment or figure out a way to make the website faster so it could handle more traffic. That was my only two options. And since there was money in one, but I didn't have to spend money in the other, I spent hours and hours and hours with my head inside of Microsoft documentation trying to figure out how I can rewrite this website or parts of it to make it faster.
Is that all you were doing at that time, or you still have a regular day job?
I think, what was it, around 2002 time frame? I don't remember the exact timing. It was a few years after we got it started. Um, Me and Garrick were actually working for the same company at the time, and that company laid us off. And so we're like, all right, I guess we're going full-time Street Source now. And that was actually what caused us to go full-time. So
So with that, you said that was the highest peak that you had was like that 12.5 million a day.
yeah.
Now, as someone that designed all that and laid everything out, how did that feel to say, all right, well, our little creation over beers now has this kind of traffic?
It was awesome. It really was. I mean, just because what really is important or was important to me was the fact that in order for me getting that much traffic, that means you got to be doing some good, right? And
Yeah.
so, you know, we're doing something that is helping the mini truck community, and that to me was just I loved it. It was awesome. So
So when did it start changing? Was it after Facebook come out? Like what slowed those numbers down?
yeah, Facebook pretty much killed us. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And what's funny is Brant over at Graphic Disorder was warning me about that many years when I was denying it. Nah, Facebook's not gonna kill us. Nah, Facebook's not gonna kill us. And I bet you if you talk to him, he'll agree that yeah, he was warning me, and I wasn't listening. Um, but and that's typical. You hear that from a lot of companies that fail, right? That they had the warnings on the wall, but they just weren't listening, right? And I don't know that there's a lot of ways that we could have competed with Facebook. Um, but yeah, it ended up being what was the end of us.
Well, no one, I guess, thought Facebook was going to be what Facebook was because you had the
Right.
MySpace, and there's like I was never on MySpace, but I knew friends that were. So it's not like we thought it was going to be some big massive thing. We thought it'd just be another,
Yeah.
another fad. But I guess at that point, internet was becoming more available. You had DSL. It wasn't all the dial-up stuff anymore.
Right. Yeah. The
But
the thing that killed us, I think, the most about Facebook was when they started doing the Facebook groups, and that kind of stuff. It was like because then people they didn't have um they could create their own little niche that was
yeah,
you know S10s with dancing beds. You can do whatever you want, right? You can just create a group just for that. And so it started kind of fragment. It started fragmenting all of our traffic out to other places. And so,
I guess also like phones weren't what they were. You
oh,
couldn't just extra call. Everything was long distance and extra money,
yep,
and so that was the way a lot of us would talk to friends across the country because it was free.
yeah. Well, yeah, because you could send an instant message to your buddy and it would pop up when he logged in. It would pop up on Street Source saying, "Hey, you've got a new message." Blah blah blah. Oh, cool, and you read it. And talk back and forth. Yeah, there was a lot of technologies that came out that made Street Source, well, for lack of a better term, unnecessary, right?
Yeah.
So it is
But
what
I
it
don't
is.
think to this day, I don't think there's in our community, I don't think there's another chat room style communication platform that could touch what Street Source was.
No, 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 not at all. That
I
whole, that
mean,
whole
not just
yeah, all the
not
other websites all the other websites that were out there were all here's information. You can come and look at it, right? None of it was you can interact. We were the first ones to do any kind of interaction. And I'd been doing a lot of that type of interaction programming before I started working on Street Source. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I remember the instant messenger was actually copied off of, oh man, Garrick sent it to me. I was at work, um, and Garrick, it was back in the RA days. Garrick there was some website out there, some Sony website, I believe, that had an instant messenger that he thought was really cool. It was web based, and he's like, check this out, because at this point he kind of knew I could program anything if he could give me an example of what it should
yeah.
do. And so he sent it to me. He goes, "This is really cool." He goes, "All the people." He was working at DirecTV at the time, I believe, and a lot of his coworkers would use that website to talk to each other and just chit chat while they're working. Um,
Yeah.
and so he sent that to me, and I was like, "That's pretty cool." And I was like, "How are they doing that?" And so I started digging in behind the scenes, reverse engineered it, and I'm like, "All right, yeah, I can build this." And so I reverse engineered it and built it. As a matter of fact, it looked almost exactly the same for quite a while. Same same fonts and everything. Um, and
Yeah.
so, yeah, it was just, I mean, where these different ideas came from, it's just random all over the place. Like there's lots of things that we did that came from us bullshitting with a bunch of people at a truck run. It would be cool if, that those kind of statements. And whenever I heard it would be cool if, I loved it. I'm like, sweet, a new idea.
So with the way like the messenger and all that stuff worked, um, was there, which I guess that's before you couldn't really get on your phone back then. There wasn't any kind of mobile applications for that then.
No, I
I'm trying
mean
to think when the
the iPhone
phone
came out in
became
2000.
a
The iPhone
yeah.
came out in 2007, and that was the first actual usable phone that you could do anything like that on. I mean, before the iPhone,
Yeah.
I had a Palm Pilot phone, but no, you wouldn't try to do anything like that on a phone like that. Most people, even Garrick at the time had a flip phone. I mean, that was the phones that everybody had. And they might do text messaging, but the text messaging apps were like emails, kind of. It's not like a chat like they are
Yeah.
now. It was like you send them a message and you receive a message, and it looked like an email on the phone, right? And so it
Yeah. I
wasn't as
remember that.
user friendly. Yeah, and so there wasn't. I mean, if you wanted to get together with other mini truckers and weren't going to do it either in your local town or at a show, Street Source was the place to be.
Where or when did you start doing like a mobile aspect of the website?
Um, that's a good question. Um, we
Because
never
I'm sure
did.
you had to change the format of some of that to make it mobile friendly.
I think that was one of our later attempts, but I think it was already dying at that point. I think that was 2008, 2009 kind of a thing after the iPhone came out. Um, and I think at that point it was already getting clobbered by Facebook. Um,
When did Facebook come out?
2007, if I remember correctly.
So it came out before the iPhone stuff was. So it was all computer based
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
time.
Facebook came out before it might have been a couple years before actually, um, before the iPhone came out.
With all the stuff that you created for Street Source, what would you say would be your most favorite aspect you created and your least favorite aspect you created?
Most favorite had to be the chat room because we had a lot of fun in the chat room.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I mean, and it would have probably a close second would be just the format of the magazine and being able to actually pull it off. Um, Nobody had ever done that before, as far as I'm
because y'all
aware.
did the page swipe deal and all that stuff, didn't you?
The page swipe thing was actually a Macromedia Flash thing that I think we messed around with it for a while, but no, that came way later. Um, no, when we first did the actual magazine, it was strictly just a website that looked like the shape of a magazine page, um,
Yeah.
and it was nobody was doing that. We'd never seen it before. I mean, at least I didn't. I had never seen it before, and me being a nerd that I am, I visited all the mini truck websites of the time, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never seen it. Um, to the point to where whenever Garrick suggested the idea, I at first I told him no. I'm like, you can't do that. Not with dial up. You can't do a magazine online, Garrick. Sorry, but it can't be done. But Garrick persisted, and he kept bugging me about it. He's like, Kris, I know you can pull this off. I know you can do this, dude. Just do it. So he pushed me really hard until finally I was like, okay, fine, I'll do some research.
Now, did you have someone doing any of the graphic stuff, or is it just you two doing it?
All the layouts was just me and Garrick. It was actually me at first. I kind of taught Garrick how to use Photoshop because I did a lot of Photoshop stuff prior to any of the any of that, and Garrick had never messed with Photoshop as far as I'm aware at the time, and so I kind of taught him how I was doing things and stuff, and then after a while he started doing most of them. But in the beginning, it was just me. That's why in the very beginning issues, that's why I want to get them
I,
back online. So the very beginning issues, it would have actually I think it was that way all the way till the end. I think, but it would have Garrick as the editor and me as the art director because I did all the artwork.
okay. I'm surprised neither one of you guys took off into the magazine world after Street Source.
Well, I'm a tech guy, so unless I wanted to work on like a mini trucking website or something like that, there's not. I mean, I guess I could have,
But
but
But the magazines were, I mean, I guess they had websites and stuff then, but it was the only way to put it is semi archaic compared to what you guys had, though.
Yeah,
So you
true.
probably transitioned to one of those companies and just blown up their presence.
It's possible. It's possible. I didn't. What I mean, the way that me and Garrett separated and split ways. If you guys remember, there was a video game towards that was a drag racing video game. So it was called Street Challenge. That was on the website there for a while. Do you remember that?
I remember that one.
Um, Basically, it was a drag racing video game that we created to promote the car magazine. Do you remember that we used to have
Okay.
two different magazines, a truck and a car magazine? Um, Built
Yeah.
this drag racing video game, and it kind of got legs of its own. And it was kind of funny because people were coming, like young kids and people that were not mini truckers at all, and not the type of people that would be in that scene, were coming to SSM to download the video game. Well, they had to create an account, and so they were winding up in a chat room. Imagine a bunch of mini truckers in a chat room with a bunch of teenage kids that want to play a video game. That's not going to go over
Yeah.
well. And it didn't go over well at all. Um, Basically, the mini trucker was like, "Get the fuck out of here, man! Why are you here?" And so we're like, "Uh oh, we have a problem." And so we ended up separating the two, and we had a separate website and everything else for the video game, and then a separate, and then of course Street Source. And so when me and Garrett decided to go separate ways, I took the video game, and he took Street Source.
Gotcha.
And so the video game still exists still to this day.
And
It's
what is it?
it's called the name of it is it's EV3. It stands for Extreme Velocity 3. Um, it's
Gotcha.
in it. It's on Android App Store, iOS App Store. But anyways, the video game still exists still to this day. It's called EV3 because it's went through several different revisions over the years. Right,
Yeah.
new versions come out, but yeah. So
Well, I guess you guys could probably take credit for coining the term screen name because you guys had screen names on Street Source before anybody else did. Now
well, I
it's
don't.
Instagram.
Yeah, but AOL had that way before we did.
I guess it is true. People would put their name on AOL.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I
I know
know.
most of the time it was whatever people's tags were on their vehicles is what their screen name was for the most part. And
Yeah, I've seen a couple of photos that people have sent me from shows recently where somebody's got an old version of the Street Source logo on the back of their truck, and it's peeling like really bad. If any of you guys want the original artwork, let me know. I'll send you a copy of it so you can print some new stickers. But
I know you guys were definitely influential in where I started because if it wasn't for Street Source, I never would have had that door open to shoot for the magazine stuff. But I think you were also instrumental in a lot of, shops getting their name out there or builders or painters or whatever, getting their name out there because no one, across the country would have known, that Jim down the road paints. Okay, well, he's our local painter. Well, now he's on Street Source
Mhm.
and he's posting pictures of what he does or builds or whatever. And now someone from, 1,000 miles away is sending them work.
Well,
So
yeah, I mean,
I think you guys were instrumental in that.
yeah, I mean, Street Source was basically the mini trucker's social media back then, right? It's like and that's what you do
Yeah.
nowadays to get to market stuff, right? Is social media. Same thing was true back then, but it happened to be Street Source. But I mean, yeah, we probably helped quite a few people. The people that were doing good and had good work and so forth. They were very very much liked by the people on Street Source. But there was also the flip side of that. There was companies that probably went out of business because of us because they weren't doing a very good job and everybody was putting them on blast. So it's one of the things that I always enjoyed about the mini truck group, and it was totally present on Street Source, and that is that people will tell you how they feel.
Yeah.
They will light you on fucking fire. So be careful. So yeah, a lot of that.
Now, if you tried to create that Street Source atmosphere or that brand now, could you do it, and would it be different, or would it not even be able to sustain now?
Ooh. Man, that's a good question. And actually one that toward the end of Street Source, we were asking ourselves because we were at a point where we had to reinvent or go out of business. Ah, you know, you might be asking the wrong person because I tried to figure that out and failed. So I don't know, to be honest. That's a good question.
When did you know that it was time to pull the plug and move on and do something else? I guess y'all had to go get jobs after that a certain point, or
Um, well, when me and Garrick split, he went and got a job, um, and I was doing the video game full time. Because at that point, the video game was making enough money to support me.
okay.
And so I worked full time for the video game probably for another 10 years after. It wasn't until recently that I ended up getting a day job as well. Mainly because, well, I won't go into the video game stuff, but yeah, the video game market on iOS and Android is very competitive now. Not as easy as it was when I first started. So,
I guess there's more people that can access the technology to create the stuff versus
mhm.
back then.
There's lots of like for the longest time, my video game was one of like two or three in the App Store, and mine was way different than the other two. Um, but nowadays, I think there's like 30. I mean, it's ridiculous. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so it's okay. With all the skills that I learned from Street Source and the video game and other things I've worked on over the years, I found it. I actually could make decent money out in the civilian world. So I'm like, all right, well, get her done. So,
So when did you part ways with Street Source? What year was that?
oh man, me and Garrick separated, and then he ran it for a while, and then I ended up getting it back. It was me and Bob Hayes that ran it for a while. If you know who, you know him,
Okay.
obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, me and him ran it for a while. Um, so the time that I actually like, I mean, I guess I walked away from it twice.
So when was the first time?
Um, oh God, you're asking me dates. I'm having a hard time remembering. Um, it has been sometime around 2007, 2000. Yeah, somewhere around 2007, I would imagine. Somewhere around in there. The second time, I'm even going to be worse on that date. I have to ask Bob. He would probably remember the date better than me. But it was 2000, early 2010s was the second time.
So you had more than a 10-year run with this brand, creating it and making it what it was.
Yeah.
What was the final straw for you to go, that's it, I'm out, it's time to move on?
The last time me and Bob were working on it, that's when Johnny O was editor. Magazine was phenomenal. I don't know if you remember that period of time when we
God,
did that.
he was dealing with it.
Yeah. No, when Johnny O was doing the magazine, it was amazing. I mean, the magazine itself was top notch. It was probably as good as, well, I shouldn't say as good, better than Street Source ever was, as far as the magazine was concerned. But at that point, we were still fighting Facebook, hardcore.
Yeah.
Um, and I ended up completely rebuilding it because remember, the code base had been slowly getting modified over years, and so it had gotten to a point where it just needed to be scrapped and rebuilt
Yeah.
because it was just getting old. It was aging. And so our attempt to scrap and rebuild it, um, we got a lot of backlash. And it might have been just some people with negative opinions that were overly vocal, maybe. Um, but it got to a point where I was just like, man, is this still worth doing? You know what I mean? Because we weren't getting it wasn't, didn't seem like it was doing the community a lot of good like it used to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I was
Yeah,
like, yeah,
I
maybe it's time
completely
to.
I completely forgot Johnny O was there because that was after he left Street Trucks and
Yep.
Sport Truck and everything, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was
Because I had
editor
him
for a
on a
while.
few episodes ago and didn't even recall that he had done that.
Yeah, I mean, his photography is just, I've always looked at it and went, wow, it's amazing. Um,
Yep, he's kind of one
but
of the ones that's pushed me to do what I do for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah, and it was great working with him. The unfortunate part was is that we weren't making enough to really pay him what he deserved to get paid, is what it boiled down to be. So
Yeah,
he's got to do what he's got to do. So made sense.
So does the website still exist to this day?
It does. We ended up selling it, me and Bob, for a couple thousand. It wasn't very much at all. We sold it, and the guy bought it, and it's still there. StreetSource.com still exists, and it's got a lot of the same content. I mean, it's got the owner profiles, and it's got a lot of that stuff. It's still there. It looks totally different. They changed the logo, a bunch of other
Oh, really?
things, but yeah,
I'll have to pull it up and look at it.
yeah. It's definitely different. As a matter of fact, I mean, my login doesn't work anymore because my login had special powers, and so it was obviously disabled. But no, from what I hear, your login, if you remember what the username and password was back in the day, it should still work in theory, as far as I understand. But
I forgot about the logins having different stuff because I remember when I started shooting for you guys, I had a different, like I could access more than what I could have before I was shooting. I forgot all about that.
yeah, and if you remember, we had some really cool features in the chat room that we used to. Remember, people would come in there and just start causing trouble, and
Yeah.
we had the poof. Remember that?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
so and so just got poof.
Oh, that was funny. Oh man, everybody loved it because all of a sudden we just wouldn't hear from them anymore. They'd just be gone.
Yeah.
And that's actually what would happen. Because we would do it to people because it wasn't permanent. The only thing it would do is close their browser window. That's all it would do.
Yeah.
It was a command I would send that would then cause some code to pop up in their browser that would trigger the browser to close, which you can't do nowadays because security won't let you do that in browsers nowadays. But back then you could do it, and so it would be people would be just typing along, all of a sudden this chat window would just disappear. That's why we called it poof, because it was just like poof, and then people would come in there and say, "What's this poof thing?" I'm like, "You want me to poof you?" Well, you're not banning me, are you? I'm like, "No, I'm not banning you. I'll do it. Here, you can log back in. I'll show you." And they're like, "Okay." And I'd poof them, and they'd go, "Oh, dude, that was cool."
Someone would get poofed, and then everybody else in there would talk shit like, "Oh, damn, I guess he shouldn't be in here running his mouth," or
But anyways, if you remember back in the day, we had the poof, and then we had the of course we could ban someone, right?
Yeah.
And then we had one of them that me and Garrick would use only if somebody pissed us right the fuck off. And we only used it a couple times because it was vicious. It was to the modern definitions, it was a virus that I would put on their machine. Because if somebody I would ban them and they create a new username and they'd come back, and I'd ban them again and they'd create a new username and they'd come back, and finally I was just like, dude, stop screwing with us. And so there was a command that I could give that would start off a chain that would pop up. What was it? 500 browser windows with all different porn sites. I'm like, I hope to God they're at work right now. Boom. Because you think about 500 windows, how long it will take you to close 500 windows, and the sound it will be make when this chorus of sex happening.
Wow. I'm glad I never received that. So.
No, it was purposely meant to be cruel. It was something I came up with because I'm like, I want something when I get just downright angry, right? And very, very few times did it ever get used. It was like it was a nuclear bomb basically that I would set off if somebody was just not. I mean, you ban them over and over and over and over again. It's like sometimes you get to a point where it's like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
If you want to create a new username, at least with the new username, behave, and I'll never know, right? But they would just come back into the chat room and start causing drama, and it was just like, oh my gosh, dude. Yeah, that chat room. So me and Garrett played babysitter very often. That's why we always tried to get it to where we had moderators in there 24 hours a day, because we get people in there to come in there and cause trouble, and we'd have to have somebody that could control it, but yeah.
So with everything that you had done when you created that, which I guess the first question would be, is Street Source the coolest thing you've created in your life, or have you got stuff that even trumps that in your mind?
As far as as far as what I've ever created that gave me the most personal satisfaction is, I guess, how I would define that. I would say Street Source is number one. Video game would be number two, but Street Source is definitely number one. It was my first um, change the world moment, I guess you'd say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're like, I'm actually doing something that is actually changing the world. I'm like, this is cool. So,
But now, well, I guess what would be your overall take of that? Like, was it? I don't know how to put that. If it's like you knew you did something good and then it ran its course and you're like, cool, it is what it is, or is it something that you wish you could still do to this day if it wasn't for Facebook coming in?
um, I guess the question you're asking me is would I like it to have succeeded and still be around today? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, but or would you? I mean, because you'd be in a different place right now if it did stay around. I'm sure.
No, I would have loved for it to have longevity and still be around and still be my main job today. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did. I fought tooth and nail trying to keep it alive. But
Had
some
you
things
ever
just run their course, I guess.
had you ever tried to think of some other platform to come out with, whether it was truck related or whatever? That like, well, maybe this will be the next big thing. Or after the the magazine, the website, you said, yeah, I'm just that's good. I'm gonna
I
hang.
think the video game was that for me. Um, because it's drag racing, right? Um, and I've always been I grew up around drag racing. Um, and so you know, drag racing and custom vehicles are my two loves, right? Both of them are cars. Um, and so yeah, I just shifted from one love to the other when was doing the magazine, or not the magazine, the video game.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I definitely miss that aspect, but I think in my life now to come home and sit and play on a chat room, I'd probably wouldn't have time for that. But then again, we're scrolling through Instagram and Facebook and TikTok all the time. So
Yeah, I mean, it was social media of its day. It really was. Um, it was fun to hang out. I mean, we had our regulars, and then we had lots of other people. I mean, I think I remember like on a Friday and Saturday night, we'd get like hundreds of people in there, which was crazy because you had
and
a
I
hard
knew
time following the conversation at that point. But yeah,
yeah, who was they talking to? Wait a minute, let me scroll back up. Who was
exactly.
what I missed that. It's like I don't think I knew anybody's name. Like you knew everybody you can see them at a show
Hmm.
as their screen name.
Yeah, and that's another one of those moments when you realize that your creation um is kind of gotten a life of its own. Is when you know I go to truck runs and stuff, and I'd be in a group of people, and a lot of them wouldn't know who I was, right? And so, and
Yeah,
actually, a lot of times I preferred it that way. But it was just kind of cool when people would introduce themselves. I'm so and so. Oh yeah, I'm blah 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 on streets on SSM. I'm like they were everybody was using their real name and their SSM screen name as when they're introducing themselves to other people at truck runs, and I was just like,
100%.
that's when you know that you have made a difference. Is when you've just changed basic conversation at a truck run. You know what I mean? And so to me that was just like that's cool.
Do you still go to shows, or are you completely out of that scene now?
I go to a few. I'm not completely out. I'm still really wanting to buy an old school S10 and doing like an 80s retro mini truck. Um, Still want these days wanting to do that. Nowadays I've been doing mostly hot rods and resto mods. I've got a '78 Corvette out in the garage that I've been working on. We're in the middle of an engine swap. We're putting a supercharged 350 in it. Um,
Nice.
so I've been doing kind of more that I have definitely still I have not had a day when I haven't had a nice vehicle, right? Because that's just my thing. Um, Custom vehicle. But lately it's been you know, a daily driver with a resto mod in the garage that I'm working on.
Yeah.
Um, I
Well, I guess you being in Boise,
Go ahead.
there's a few guys. I guess they're in Boise. I don't know if you ever run into like Chad Lucas lives up
Hmm.
there.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's kind of amazing how much of an effect Boise, the little Boise, Idaho, has had on there's a lot of people that have been influential that have been either from Boise or
Bill,
passed through Boise.
I think Billy Bob lives up there.
Yep.
So I didn't know if you ever still talk to some of those OG guys like that as well in town.
Oh, uh we had a guy that was in Severed Ties. His nickname was Skittles. Um, Passed away
Yeah.
a while ago. And he had a celebration of life thing that basically brought all of us old school mini truckers back together again that hadn't seen each other in decades. Um, and that was awesome. You get to see people you haven't seen in a long time. Um, and I remember one of the things that really made me miss mini truckers, because I haven't been, around large groups of them in a while, is that we were outside. And it's a bunch of guys that were outside smoking, and there was a large group of people outside, and somebody came out and asked, is anybody sober enough to drive?" And we're like, "No, no, 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 no." And he's like, "Dang it, I'm trying to get a ride to Albertsons, which is a grocery store." And he's like, "Why
Yeah.
do you want to go to a grocery store?" And we're like, "Oh, because it named somebody. I don't remember who it was." He said, "Well, so and so said that he would fuck the apple pie if we went to the store and bought one." And I went, I literally spit my beer out and went, "Oh, I miss you fuckers." I miss you fuckers. Just the crazy shit we used to do, man. Just, yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
Yep, all of us are older, and most of us probably, can't stay up as late anymore, and
No. Yeah,
be hurt one
I,
day.
I can't party like I used to, that's for sure.
Yeah. So when you popped up, I can't remember, you was on someone's page or something. You'd popped up on Facebook, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I was like, "I've not heard that name in forever." That's why I sent you that friend request. I'm like, "Man," I was like, that's a flashback for sure."
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was me posting wanting to I'm still trying to find a way to get the old back issues up online again so people can see them. That would be all
What?
your work would go back online where you can go back and look at your old work and all that stuff. And all the people that had their vehicles featured in the magazine could go online and see it. Granted, the photos would be old because they are,
Yep.
early 2000s quality, but but at the same time, I think it would be good to get it to where everybody can see it again. I think it would be cool. And so I've been trying really hard to make that happen. I don't have the rights to the name anymore, which is what's making it difficult. I have the ability. I could put it up tomorrow if I could get permission.
Well,
Um,
too bad you can't get with the guy that owns it now and be like, "Hey, let's work something out."
yeah, I've talked to him, and he's told me that he was going to put it up and then didn't. So I'm kind of like, just let me do it. Just let me just let me just say in the email, "It's okay, Kris, go ahead, do it." And I'm like, I'd have it done. Because it would not be hard at all.
Yeah.
But and since I've got the video game, I've got hosting that I could throw it up on. It would be really easy. But yeah, I think there's something like 200 and something back issues. I mean, that's a lot of content.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many? I mean, that's.
Well, I know one of my covers at one or two. I might have had a couple of the Street Source was my cover shoot was I have it hanging on the wall still. I remember printing it out and
Yeah.
hanging it up. So
So if there's anybody watching this that knows the guy that owns the current Street Source, bug him. Tell him to put it online.
well, I
So,
think people have been posting. I think it's on the Mini Truck Where Are They Now page. Somebody's like, "Oh, I brought a bunch of pictures off of Street Source or whatever." I think that's the page that somebody's been posting a
yeah.
lot of like old pictures recently.
Yeah, and I posted and basically saying, "What's the interest if in putting those old back issues up online?" And that started a big huge conversation as well. It was in that same group, but yeah, it's still to this day you always hear people talking about, yeah, back on Street Source they had ball, just the name coming up is just kind of cool.
The bad part about that, if someone mentions Street Source, you automatically know, yep, they're old because these kids don't know anything about Street Source. So
Oh,
it's all us old guys that do. All of us
that's
pray,
true. That's true. I mean, shoot, in
My
December,
daughter wouldn't know what it is. She's 24.
Yeah, in December I'll be 50. So yeah, it's
Yeah, so I'm a month older than you then.
oh yeah, because I mean, yeah, has it been that long? That's crazy, but it has.
Yeah. But it was definitely cool to get you on. Like I said, to tell the Street Source story. I think this will be a good throwback for a lot of guys to listen to or check out on YouTube or whatever, just to see. Probably bring a lot of memories back from people. They might be going through trying to like, what was my screen name back then? I wonder if I can get back in with my screen name. So
Yeah,
you never know.
I know I can't. I know my owner profile still exists under my old screen name, but obviously my access has been revoked. But yeah,
Yours was SSM Kris, wasn't it?
no, it's SSM Webmaster.
Webmaster. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. And then it was SSM Garrick, wasn't it?
No, it was SSM Editor.
Didn't he?
Was his?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
because always the SSM Dash had the name.
Yep. And we had it so that you could not create a username that had SSM dash in the beginning of it because that just your username being that gave you power.
Gotcha.
I had it coded that way. So,
Well, you created a legend in our custom vehicle world for sure. And, I'm sure I speak from everybody else. We thank you for creating that back then because I think it brought so many people together. And now I'm friends with people all over the country that I don't think I would be friends with to this day if it wasn't for Street Source back in the day.
yeah, and that's the that's what makes Street Source have such a warm place in my heart is because it did do that. It was community before the modern community that we know of now existed.
I always joke and say I could drive across the country and never pay for a hotel room if I didn't have to, just because of the people that I've met. And I'd say a lot of those relationships started from Street Source, from the chat rooms back in the day.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was really
But
fun.
it was good having you all, man. Good catching up. I'm glad you popped up on my Facebook a while back. Like I think as soon as you accepted that friend request, I'm like immediately, I'm like, I gotta have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, well, man, we'll definitely keep an eye out for anything if you come out with. How do people find you other than on Facebook? Are you on any other platform?
Well, not really. Um, yeah, I mean, hit me with a friend request on Facebook, just Kris Bloom. Um, Anybody that has anything that even looks like mini truck in their profile, I will accept it. So,
That's how we know who's our people.
yep, yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was good catching up.
Yeah, thanks, man.